Hi everyone, I'm just going to give it a few minutes, let some people join the stream. So as stated in the description of the event, I'm going to be going over writing task 2 today and some useful tips on how to structure to make sure you get a high band answer. Give it a few moments. Give it a couple of minutes and then I'll kick off. Like I say, just going over writing task 2 and making sure you get a high banding answer, giving you some useful tips and instructions on how to, first of all, outline your answer, which is always helpful, and then how to write the answer itself. And I'll close with an example answer, and then people can join the live if they have any questions, anything specific about grammar or IELTS themselves, and I'll do my best to answer. Okie dokie, so there's a fair few of you watching now, so I will make a start. So, writing task 2. You will be given 40 minutes to complete, and you have to write a minimum of 250 words. So those 40 minutes are very, very useful to break that up into planning and writing and then proofreading time. So in your planning stage, obviously, you'll be given a list of questions with different topics. So once you've chosen kind of which one you think you know most about, you want to identify the topic itself. So some examples of potential topics that you could be asked about include current affairs, social and physical environment, shops and services, health and welfare, or occupational health and safety. This isn't an exhaustive list. There could be a lot more, but it's things it's nothing specialist. You will never be asked to write about a specialist topic in IELTS. It will be something you are already quite well aware of. But yeah, you need to know sort of a fair amount about sort of general knowledge to get good score, good banding on this task. So again, just to reiterate, you won't be asked to write about anything specialist. It will be something you already have knowledge of. However, before the exam, I would recommend to read as much as possible about subjects of general interest. So going back to that previous slide, things like current affairs, kind of what's going on in government, shops and services, health and welfare, occupational health and safety, things you will already know about kind of just by being alive day to day, things you see on the news, that kind of stuff. And also it's worth noting that writing task 2 is worth more than the first writing task. So it's probably a good idea to start with task 2 first. That's not to say you should use all of your time on task 2, because to pass, you have to have answered both. But you should probably devote a little bit more time to task 2 in order to properly plan and structure your answer. So before we get into kind of tips and actual planning the answer, it's worth remembering that the tone of writing task 2 should always be formal and impersonal. So you're never directly addressing the audience. You should keep it as impersonal as possible. So a good tip is to imagine that the audience is made up of people that you respect but don't know very well. So no addressing like you or he or she, it's generalized. And assume your audience is educated, because it is an essay-based question. So obviously when you study at university, you'll be asked, depending on your degree, but you might be asked to write scientific style essays where your writing should be concise and informative. So it's safe to assume that people that are reading your essay already have a sort of base level knowledge. And again, do not address people personally, because the tone should be formal and impersonal. So moving on to what's actually expected of you. In order to complete writing task 2, you should be able to do at least 3 of these 4 things, but all 4 would be fantastic and means you'll be scoring band 7 and above. So you should be able to, number 1, identify a problem and provide a solution. Number 2, present an opinion, assessment, or hypothesis that's backed up by evidence or justification of your arguments. And then number 3, compare and contrast any evidence or implications to your problem or solutions that you have. And then finally, you should be able to analyze and challenge opposing arguments, evidence, or ideas. So I will go through how to complete writing task 2 step by step, how to actually sort of plan your answer. So first of all, you want to identify your topic words. So this will help you outline the purpose of your argument. So a little example I have here of a question that you might be asked. This is taken from a past paper, so don't bank on this coming up again. This is just an example. How can society ensure that people living with disabilities are given equal and fair opportunities? So the topic words that I've identified there are society, disabilities, and equal and fair opportunities. So I know that my essay should cover those 3 topics, or that topic as a whole, but with those words as a focus. And then next we have the planning. So before just starting to scribble and write down, you want to actually plan your answer, because that will help with the flow and it will read much better, and the person that's assessing your work will be able to understand what you're talking about an awful lot more. So you want to outline any piece of writing before you actually start it. Having a plan and going in focused means you will score a lot higher. So as it's a small essay question, you want to break it down into at least your introduction, main body of words, and then your conclusion. In your introduction, after you've picked a question, obviously you want to identify your topic words, and you want to confirm, what is my chosen topic? What is my position? Where do I stand on that argument? Are you going to write for or against? Obviously, you have to have decided that. And then what am I going to say? So your introduction, usually the last sentence of any introduction will kind of give a brief overview of what you're going to say in your main body. And then the main body itself is where the bulk of your writing should be. It's where your argument is presented and backed up with evidence. For writing task 2 specifically, they ask for at least 2 points backed up with evidence. If you have more than 2 points, that's brilliant. But if you have less than, you are at risk of scoring a lot lower and maybe even failing. So make sure you've got at least 2 points backed up by evidence. And then in the conclusion, that should be a summary of your main arguments. And if the question has asked you to do, this is where you give any suggestions. So like any advice, anything that you think needs doing on the subject, etc. But it's very important to note, in a conclusion, you should never be introducing any new points or kind of new evidence. A conclusion should be a summary of the essay itself and state your kind of closing arguments. It shouldn't be somewhere to bring up new ideas. If you have another idea, what you want to do is go and put it back in your main body and justify that with more evidence. Step 3, write your answer. So once you've outlined using the instructions in step 2 that I've just given, you want to carefully complete your answer for the writing task. Now, where I've put the suggestion of how many words you should spend, this is literally just a suggestion. This isn't something you're going to be marked against for doing less than 40 words in an introduction or less than 30 words at a conclusion. This is just a rough idea of how you should be spending those 250 words within the writing task. So the introduction, I've given around 40 words. Like I say, this should be a general overview of your chosen topic, a few facts, an introduction for the reader to kind of get a grasp of what you're about to be talking about. And then you state your position, your opinion on the argument, and then a brief introduction of what you're actually going to write. Like I say, the last sentence of an introduction should give the reader a kind of clear idea of what you're about to be talking about. And then in the main body, I've put around 180 words. If it's more, brilliant. If it's less, make sure your introduction and conclusions are bulked out. But like, you can write more than 250 words. This is just a base level minimum what they're expecting. If you can write more than 250 words in the 40 minutes, fantastic. So yeah, your main body should be at least 2 points backed up by evidence. So here I've got topic sentence 1 and evidence, and then topic sentence 2 plus evidence. Like I say, if you've got more, brilliant, but make sure you've got at least 2, else you are at risk of getting a low banding score or even failing, and we don't want that. So in your conclusion, as I said, it's a summary of the main points that you've made in your main body, any concluding arguments, and then again, just to reiterate, because it is really important, in your conclusion, there should be no new evidence, no new ideas. If there is something else you want to talk about, go back and put it in your main body, else you leave the essay open. It's then not a conclusion. It's just another statement within your main body. You'd have to rewrite a conclusion if you brought up new ideas, and that just kind of ruins the flow, and it wouldn't read properly. You would get marked down for that. And then finally, once you've got your answer written, it's always a good idea to proofread and check your answer. So I've written four little points to go through when you are proofreading, but again, not an exhaustive list. There's other things you can be checking. If you've got any questions, please let me know. But the 4 most important are, is my grammar correct? Are there any spelling mistakes? Are all of my points backed up by evidence? Because that is one thing you will be asked to do when you study at university. Every point you make in a scientific essay or English essay, you will be asked to back that up with in university, it's a reference, but obviously through the writing task, it's an essay that you've come up with off your own back. So we ask that you back every point up by evidence. And then finally, have I presented a clear argument? So from reading your answer, can I easily identify whether I'm arguing for or against the question that I've been asked? No sort of sitting on the fence. That's not to say don't argue both sides, because you will score higher if you are able to clearly present the opposing argument and back up why you disagree with it. But don't confuse the reader. Always make sure your argument is clear and someone can tell whose side you're sort of fighting for. So what I'm going to do is end with an example answer. This isn't a complete example answer. I've just given the start of the introduction, the start of the main body, and then the start of the conclusion. Now, this would be a band 9. I'm going to go through the question, go through what I've written, and say why that would be such a high scoring answer. And then again, if you've got anything to add to the example, that would be great. Like I say, it's unfinished. So if you could maybe think of a second point for the answer, that'd be brilliant, because I've only written the first one. I can't give you all the answers. Right. So the example question I've used, again, this is off a past paper. There's no guarantees this will come up. So please, please, please read around the subject. Some people believe that teenagers should be required to do unpaid community work in their free time. This can benefit teenagers and the community as well. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So, introduction. It is a common belief that children are the backbone of society. The idea that youngsters should be encouraged to engage with social work to create a flourishing society is one shared by many. Social work has been known to aid individualistic growth of young people, and I believe that this motivation's positives outweigh the negatives. So there, I have plenty of tenses. My grammar's correct. I've double-checked my spelling. And then I know that my stand has been given. I agree that teenagers should be engaged in social work. I think it's good. So I'm about to argue for the positives of teenagers engaging in social work. Onto the main body. Here's, again, yours should contain at least 2 points backed up by justification or evidence. I've only written the first one because I can't give you an answer to you, because this might not come up on the test. So there's no point learning like a perfect answer. You need to have read around sort of all kinds of different general knowledge subjects. Like I say, it won't be specialist. It will always be current affairs, stuff involved in work, things you will have already come up against. And then as a bonus to get real high banding, if you include a contrasting argument and any implications within your main body. So the example here I've got is, firstly, social work engaged by children at a young age can be associated with character development. This is due to the variety of people they encounter during their volunteering, which leads to enhanced verbal skills. So if I just stop there a second, you can see that I've written my topic sentence, which is firstly, social work engaged by children can be associated with character development. That's my statement of fact. And then my second sentence is actually backing that up with the evidence. So this is due to the variety of people they encounter. I've then gone on to enhance that evidence and kind of explain it further. So that whole paragraph there is 1 point. I would then write another paragraph outlining my second point. So if I just read the latter half of that paragraph, which is where I enhance the evidence. So which leads to enhanced verbal skills. This much improved verbal ability will help them in many different aspects over the course of their lifetime. As well as this, valuable life skills like patience, tolerance, teamwork, and leadership can also be attained whilst performing voluntary social work. So again, that's a really high scoring answer because I've used a number of tenses, all of my grammar is correct, the spelling is fine. There's a lot of different sentence structures. So there's a couple of short sentences in there. There's a lot that have several clauses that are linked together. I've used an example of I can list different skills with correct grammar. And again, spelling's all fine and the flow of the paragraph is good. So you would get a very high scoring. Well, it's a band 9 example. So if you can create something like this in your writing task 2, you will be like well on your way to getting a really high score in your IELTS. So finally, the conclusion. This is where you should sum all of your main points that you've made in the main body of the essay up and any suggestions that you may have. Again, that's only if the question asks for advice, but more often than not, they will do. So I know I've said it before, but I will say it again because it's really important that you do not bring anything new in your conclusion. It is a roundup of everything you've already said and kind of a reiteration of your stance on the argument. So to conclude, I believe that the value of teenagers involving themselves in voluntary social work is one of extreme importance, but it's not without its drawbacks. Proper monitoring and caution should be exercised to avoid any negative consequences. And I've put the ellipsis there because I wanted people to sort of finish the answer, but we'll see if kind of people want to get involved after the presentation. So yeah, that's kind of all I had really for you for today. But yeah, preparation, I think, for your writing section is key here. Preparation for all of your sections is obviously key, but with the reading, you do the prepare once you've read the passage. But with your writing, outlining is so important, that not just for the IELTS answers, but with absolutely everything. If you outline things, your flow will sound an awful lot better. There's a more structured sort of follow through in your speaking. And it makes your writing, reading, speaking, it makes everything much easier to understand if you can tell the difference between someone who has outlined an essay and someone that hasn't. Someone that hasn't tends to just kind of waffle on and ramble and bring points out of the air. Whereas if you've outlined something, your structure is introduction, point 1, point 2, point 3, conclusion. It's very easy to read, and that will show to the examiner. They will be able to see that you've prepared, and you'll probably get a point for preparation and score higher. But yeah, does anyone have any questions, or does anyone want to join the stream? And what I can do is bring you on, pop the invite link in the chat. We've got lots of hellos. Anyone want to actually come on? Does anyone have it? Is anyone preparing for their IELTS? Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone like a hand? Okay, well, I'll just pop the invite link in the chat anyway, and then you guys can come on if you wish. And like I say, it's always good to have some practice with a native speaker because I can pick you up live on your grammar, or I can give you some sort of useful tips. Is there anything you wanted to ask? No? Well, if no one wants to sort of pop on, what I will do is I'll shut the stream down. But if anyone's got any questions, please message the page, leave a comment, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. It won't be me that's here tomorrow. Dan will be here at 2 p.m. But what we will be doing are like live speaker sessions. We'll stream via Zoom. And basically, if any of you want to sort of join in that stream, you can just have we'll set a topic and we can just have a conversation about sort of anything. It gives you a chance to practice your speaking in front of someone that's not necessarily a scary examiner. Yeah. But it'll be the same time tomorrow for the next lesson. So 2 p.m. plus 1 hour British Summer Time. Okie dokie. Right, I'll leave it there. Thank you everyone for coming. And like I say, you'll see Dan and possibly me at the end for tomorrow's session. Thanks for listening.